If you've been thinking about selling your home in Las Vegas, then listen up. The goal with selling is to try and get the most money for your home while also keeping the process as stress-free as possible. To do that, it helps to be an informed seller. In this video, I'm going to cover 15 different things that you should know and remember before listing your Las Vegas home for sale. These tips will help ensure that your home selling process runs smoothly by keeping you informed of things like potential costs that you may not have known about, what to expect while your home's on the market, and how to navigate certain parts of the escrow period once your home is under contract. When trying to figure out the cost associated with selling a home in Las Vegas, one of the biggest expenses that's most common to sellers is the real property transfer tax. This tax is due upon the closing and is withdrawn by the title company from the net proceeds of your home and then sent to the county. Now, the reason I say this expense is common for sellers is because there's no rule requiring that their side pays for it. Who pays this tax can be negotiated over during the offer process, but it's generally become accepted that sellers will pay it. So that's how it ends up about 99% of the time. I've only had one deal where the buyer offered to pay the transfer tax as a way to have their offer stand out. Here's the formula to figure out the amount of the tax in Clark County, Nevada, where Las Vegas is located. It comes out to $2.55 per $500 of home value. So for example, if you sell your home for $500,000, you would divide the $500,000 by 500, which is 1,000, and then multiply by $2.55, which comes out to a total of $25.50 in transfer tax. So it's definitely not a small fee. If you'd like some more info on the transfer taxes here in Clark County, then make sure to check out the description for some helpful links. For many homeowners, the decision to sell is based on the desire to upgrade and buy another home. To do that, some homeowners first need to sell their current home to gain access to their equity. Without that money, they won't be able to buy the next home. So this begs the question, if you have to sell the home you currently live in to then buy the home that you'll move to, where do you live in between? You'll stay in the home you currently live in, but as a renter. If you need to sell first in order to buy, then your agent's going to list your home on the market with an explanation that you need a leaseback. A leaseback is essentially a separate lease agreement that's going to be attached to the purchase agreement on your home that allows you to stay behind as a renter for a few weeks while you're setting up the next place you're going to live in. The terms of this lease agreement are negotiable, but generally you'll pay a market rate based on how many days you stay there, along with some sort of deposit just like any other lease. At the same time, once your home is under contract, then you can start touring other homes you want to buy and make offers on them that are contingent on the sale of your current home. Leasebacks and contingent offers are a very common practice in today's real estate market. Make sure to discuss this with your agent if you plan on buying a home after selling, or if you need more time to move after close of escrow. When you search homes on Zillow or Redfin, you'll many times see that these websites have an automated estimate of value for each home. Each company has their own proprietary algorithm that looks at past sales in the area to estimate home value. And many times, these different websites will have values that wildly differ from one another. So why are these automated estimates of value so important that I list them in this video? Well, because they can actually cause you some problems when you're ready to sell your home. Let's say one website estimated your home at $500,000. But your agent clearly shows you based on comps and history that this home is worth $530,000. When you list your home for $530,000 and that info is populated to these websites, prospective buyers will see the list and then compare that price to the estimated value, immediately thinking that your home is overpriced without a second thought. To fix this, sellers are able to opt out of these websites giving an estimated value when they list their homes. Here in Nevada, our listing agreements have a section that allows sellers to do this, and it's something I always recommend. You don't want a random algorithm creating the narrative on your home's value. And this is also why sometimes you'll see a home for sale on Zillow or Redfin, but the estimated value section is missing. The seller opted out. When you accept an offer and your home goes under contract, the initial 7 to 14 day period of escrow is called due diligence. During this time, a buyer will conduct a home inspection to find out what issues the home may have. After receiving the inspection report back, A buyer and their agent will work together to create a list of requested repairs that they want the seller to do. Now, as a seller, you have a few options once you're presented with a request for repairs. Number one, you can just agree to do all the repairs they ask for. Number two, you can offer to do some of the repairs they asked while rejecting others. Number three, you can offer the buyer money as closing cost credit in the deal in lieu of doing repairs. And number four, you can reject all of their requests and say you won't be doing any repairs or giving any money. If your inclination is to reject all of their requests, then the deal is likely to be canceled soon after. Most sellers will decide to offer one of the first three options based on the cost of the requested repairs. To be clear, this is a negotiation, so your decision to offer to do some of the repairs or offer money instead could be met by the buyer countering that offer as well. Make sure that you're prepared for the possibility that you have to pay for repairs or for a credit while selling your home. We just covered how repairs are generally handled during escrow. Once a buyer and seller agree, that's all the repairs that need to be handled in a majority of sales. But there are cases where additional repairs need to be done based on the appraisal that's ordered by a lender. It's true that the purpose of an appraisal is so the lender is confident that their money is going towards a property that's actually worth the agreed upon price. But the other purpose is to make sure that the lender is not lending on a property that's going to significantly drop in price due to it not being safe or secure. If repairs are required by a lender based on the appraisal, then they're generally reserved for major systems and items such as roofing, HVAC, foundation, etc. Now, in my time as an agent, I've seen less than 5% of my deals have any sort of appraisal repair requirement, and that might still be high. Still, be aware that this is a possibility even after you've agreed to repairs with a buyer. Adding solar to your home is a very popular choice these days due to the cost saving on your utility bill. But if you lease the panels or bought them with long-term financing, then pay attention. To ensure that you'll keep up on the payments of your system, the solar company will put a lien on the solar equipment so they can basically repossess it if needed. Now, the lien isn't on your home, but regardless, its existence means that lenders would require the next buyer to assume the solar lease or purchase terms before they can be approved for the mortgage. The process to assume solar financing is relatively simple these days and done pretty often. The solar financing company would require a credit check, and they can usually process the assumption inside of the normal 30-day escrow period. Out of all the forms a seller needs to provide to the buyer during escrow, the most important one is likely the SRPD, or the Seller's Real Property Disclosure Form. Your agent will generally have you fill this out right before the home goes on the market, or right at the beginning of escrow. That's because this form needs to be presented to a buyer within 5 days of an accepted offer for their review. So, what is an SRPD? Well, here in Las Vegas, the SRPD is a 5-page questionnaire that asks the seller to disclose any current or past issues they've encountered with the home since they owned it. The form will ask if the seller is aware of any active issues with things like plumbing, electrical, HVAC, toilets, sinks, etc., everything. There's also questions pertaining to if there was any previous water damage, structural damage, roofing issues, mold, unpermitted work done, and even if the home was a previous site of a meth lab, I swear. The idea here is for the buyers to be made aware of any and all significant issues, current or past, so they know what to look out for in the future. Disclosing these items generally absolves the seller of future liability as well. If a seller hides past issues and they occur again, then a buyer can just go after the seller if they can prove that the seller had prior knowledge of the issue and did not disclose it to them. If you have any questions about what sort of issues should be on the SRPD, then feel free to reach out. A lot has changed in the world of residential real estate in 2024. If you didn't know, certain class action lawsuits were settled between groups of home sellers and the National Association of Realtors, which changed the way that commissions are handled. Previously, sellers would go into contract with a listing agent to sell their home for a certain percentage, with the understanding that the listing agent would then take some of that commission and offer it to the buyer's agent who brought the buyer. Now, it wasn't a rule that a seller must pay a commission to the buyer's agent, but this method was commonly practiced in like 99% of transactions. Buyer's agents would know the specific commission offered on any home prior to their clients making offers, and buyers were not directly paying their agents. The court settlement changed all that. Now, sellers and their agents are no longer to offer a fixed commission percentage to the buyer side up front. When sellers decide to list a home, They're basically executing a contract with their own listing agent that dictates only what their listing agent will get paid when the home sells. Now, this doesn't mean that sellers can't offer to pay a commission to the buyer's side to entice a buyer, but it must be negotiated on a deal-by-deal basis once they receive an offer. Each offer will now include what the buyer is asking that their agent is paid based on a previous agreement between the buyer and the buyer's agent, and then the buyer and the seller can negotiate over the total percentage if needed. You should also know that sellers and listing agents aren't even allowed to advertise if they're willing to offer the buyer side a commission in the listing or through any public marketing of the home. I know it sounds a bit confusing, and a majority of the public is still finding out about these new rules and how they work. So if you have any questions about this, please feel free to reach out to me. I would be more than happy to factually break it down so it makes more sense. Something I always tell my clients before we put their home on the market is, make sure you're fully committed to selling before we do this. And that's because once you're in escrow, a seller can't unilaterally cancel the deal. Only a buyer can. If the seller decides afterwards that they want to cancel and the buyer doesn't agree, then a few things will usually happen. The seller will likely become difficult and maybe not cooperate with repairs or paperwork submittal, and the buyer could get frustrated and then decide, it's not worth it, I'm going to cancel. But if the buyer is set on purchasing the home, then they can still try and push the sale through regardless if the seller wants out. This is not an easy process though. Now let me be clear, I'm not a lawyer, not legal advice, but there's something called specific performance where a buyer can essentially sue a seller into fulfilling the agreed upon contract and then try to force the sale if the courts will agree. The process is not quick, and here in Nevada, you'll generally have to go to mediation first. I personally have not seen a deal where specific performance has happened in a case of a seller wanting out after they're in escrow. Usually the seller is able to convince the buyer to cancel by maybe offering them some financial compensation and then covering all of their prior expenses in the deal. But again, I repeat, make sure you're committed to selling before listing your home. SID stands for Special Improvement District, and LID stands for Local Improvement District. These terms are used to describe specific areas in master plan communities here where special taxes are levied on the new home buyers. These taxes, also known as assessments, are used to reimburse the city for the cost of building the infrastructure in the area. So things like roads, lighting, sewer, curbs, etc. Now, if your home does not have an active SID or LID assessment on it, then definitely fast forward to the next section. So if you sell the home before the total SID or LID balance on your home has been paid off, then the remaining balance stays with the property and becomes the new owner's responsibility. That's right, you don't have to pay it off before selling. Now, some sellers will pay off their assessments before selling as a way to help entice buyers, almost like a value add. And that's especially if almost every home in your area still has an active assessment to pay. If you would like to check the balance of your home's SID or LID assessment, then check out the description for the link. One of the quote-unquote annoying things about selling your home is the process of allowing your home to be toured by prospective buyers. You're generally still living in the home while consistently having to keep it very tidy and organized in case you get a showing request that day. That daily upkeep can be really exhausting to some. So because of this, a common question I get is, do we still need to keep the house available for showings to other prospective buyers even after we've accepted an offer and we're in escrow? The answer is really simple. It's up to you. Let me explain the rationale of each decision and how it's handled on the MLS. If you feel like the buyer you're in contract with is rock solid and there's very little chance they'll cancel or back out, then you might decide to not allow any more showings once their offer is accepted. If that's true, then your agent will list the house as UCNS on the MLS, which tells the other agents that it's under contract, no show. On the other hand, if you're unsure that your current buyer is fully committed to purchasing the home and you want to make sure that there's a potential for backup offers, then you might decide to continue allowing showings even while you're in escrow. If that's true, then your agent will list the house as UCS on the MLS, which tells the other agents that it's under contract, show, or it's welcome to be shown. In the end, the choice to allow buyers into your home is always yours as the owner. You might be thinking about selling a home and wondering, what specific things are supposed to stay with the home and what can I take? This is a common question, and to answer it, we first have to define what's a fixture and what's personal property. Fixtures are items that are permanently attached in the home by things like nuts, bolts, screws, glue, etc. Removing them could cause a little damage. All fixtures must stay with the home and transfer over when it's sold, unless explicitly written in the contract. Then we have personal property. Personal property are things like your clothes, furniture, electronics, and any other items that can be moved easily or packed. These items move with you unless you and the buyer come to a separate agreement to sell some of them at the end of escrow. Now, one gray area is appliances, things like your washer, dryer, refrigerator. These are considered personal property, so you're actually free to take them when you're moving out. But a majority of sellers will include these appliances with the home when listing the property, and so they basically transfer with the sale of the home. Selling a home that comes full of regular appliances makes your home much more appealing to buyers. If you have any questions about what's considered a fixture or personal property, then feel free to reach out to me. Here in Las Vegas, we have many master plan communities where owners live under not just one, but two HOAs. Their individual subdivisions HOA, and then the master plan HOA. During the escrow period, a homeowner must provide the HOA resale package to a buyer and give them a chance to review all the rules and regulations associated with living in that community. That means that homeowners in master plan communities generally have to provide 2 resale packages to the buyers, and that means a slightly increased cost to those sellers. These HOA resale packages can cost a few $100s each depending on where you live, which is part of the way that HOAs make their money. So make sure you budget this potential added cost when planning to sell a home in a master plan community. If you're selling a vacant home, then you need to leave the utilities on until the day of or even the day after closing. Now, this may sound obvious, but I get this question so much that I felt it was important to mention it. Buyers need to be able to conduct an inspection where they check every system of the house, and that's impossible with the utilities turned off. They also need to conduct a final walkthrough a day or so before closing to make sure everything is still working. If you decide to turn off the utilities during escrow in an attempt to save money, then you're only delaying the potential closing and sale of your home. Another common question I get from potential sellers is about the condition of their home upon them moving out. The specific question is, do I need to pay for a professional cleaning before closing? And the answer is simple. No, you don't have to pay for a professional cleaning. That would only happen if the buyer specifically asked for it in the offer and you accepted those terms. Now, that doesn't mean you can leave the house a mess though, or the buyer is not going to sign off on the final walkthrough. So what's generally agreed upon is that the home needs to be broom swept clean without any debris or items left behind that were not agreed upon already. Most people clean their own home after moving out anyways, but don't worry if you thought a professional cleaning was mandatory. Thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions about Las Vegas or our housing market, then I'd love to hear from you. Have a great day.